Well, good morning. So, I'll tell you the goal of today, or one of my goals as we begin. My goal is to attempt to preach shorter today than normal. No amens. Interesting. The reason being that, I'll tell you about this more at the end, but we're trying to allow you some extra time after service to do something that we think will be very important, not just for today, but also for days and even months to come. So that's the plan. I really enjoy being around people who have very deep faith. So a few weeks ago, I was actually speaking at a different church, and I spoke, and afterwards a woman came up and talked to me for quite some time. Well, it turns out her husband had passed away recently, and she was dealing with all sorts of her own health issues. But what struck me was she had a smile on her face, and oh boy, this isn't going to work. Do I need to change something with my mic, or just keep talking? It's gonna be hard to keep it preached short if I just talk and talk. She had a smile on her face. I could tell she was sad, but what she wanted to tell me about was she wanted to tell me about the scripture she was reading lately, and she wanted to tell me about the people that she was sharing her faith with. And I could just tell, even with 10 minutes, that this woman had this authentic, genuine, robust faith that was not going to be shaken when difficult things happen in life. And I felt really encouraged being around her. And you all have these stories too, and I could share dozens and dozens of stories of actual people in this room who have had the same effect on me. It's you like being around those people that they can walk through the fire, and they can endure the storm, and they can weather the prayers that go unanswered. They're just inspiring. In fact, I even would venture to guess that even people that aren't sure about their faith, or they're not sure what they think about Jesus, like, those people are still inspired by people of deep faith. Like, we love being around those kinds of people. And so here's what I would like to discover and maybe study with you, both today and in subsequent weeks. How do you get to become one of those people? Last week, the big question for the opening sermon of this series was, what do you think it would look like to go all in with your faith? And today, I want to explore a slightly different question, which is, what are the ingredients to the kind of faith that's really, really, really strong? And here's why this matters. You really want to invest in your faith in times of peace, because the more that you invest in your faith in times of peace, the more you get out of your faith in times of pain. So whether you're going through a difficult time or not, it's super important to invest deeply into faith, because there's going to come a day where your faith, just like Scripture says, is going to be tested, and when your faith is tested, you want to have developed a strong faith. So how exactly do these people who have a very, very strong faith, how did they get there? Well, Acts is going to be our base text for this series, and the really interesting thing about the book of Acts is that the people in this book went through really, really hard stuff, and yet they had ridiculously strong faith. In fact, the people in the book of Acts, in some ways, had a more difficult life than we do today. I read through the book recently, just paying attention to the kinds of things that people dealt with back then. So here's things they endured. They endured the senseless murder of two leaders, at least two leaders. You've got James, the brother of John, in Acts 12. You've got Stephen in Acts 7. These people die senselessly, and the church has to handle that. They deal with political upheaval to the point of a massive riot in Acts 19. They deal with imprisonment, overt persecution. They deal with the suicide of a dear friend. They deal with famine. They deal with the execution of a church member by God Himself. And for a lot of us, any one of those stories would cause us to falter a bit, to stumble a bit in our faith. But the remarkable thing about these people in Acts is that as the book goes along, their faith gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so again, my question is, how do you How do you get that? And so I want to begin with an observation about the text itself. The first story in the book of Acts is the ascension. Jesus goes up into heaven, and he gives the apostles and others around them this last mandate, which we talked about last week. You will be my witnesses. And then for those of you that know your Bibles, Acts 2 is this remarkable story of Pentecost, where tongues of fire come down from heaven, the gospel is proclaimed, 3,000 people are baptized, the church gets underway. It's an incredible story. But what a lot of people forget is there's actually a story between these two, between the Ascension and Pentecost. It's actually really forgettable. And as I was preparing for this sermon, I kept wondering, why is it there? So after the Ascension in Acts 1, we find this odd narrative of the replacement of Judas. So Judas is one of the 12 apostles. Judas betrays Jesus. Judas dies, and they decide they need to replace him. And so they select these two people, and then they cast lots, and this guy named Matthias gets to take the spot that Judas filled. And apparently this is really important because Peter says this. Peter says it's necessary to choose one of the men who've been with us the whole time the Lord Jesus was living among us. Now, I got to be honest. When I read that, I think, is it like, do you have to pick another person? Because here, again, I'm not saying this is right. I'm just admitting to you I'm a flawed human being, but here's how I feel about this. I think, okay, you've got training from Jesus himself. You've got this clear mandate from Jesus, go be my witnesses. You've got the Holy Spirit, and you've got this clear front runner or upfront person in Peter. Like, do you really need Matthias? In fact, Matthias doesn't even show up the rest of the Bible. Like he pops up here, they put him in, he doesn't do anything, at least from what we know what's recorded in the Bible. So again, I ask, like, why are we wasting time getting Matthias on the bus? I kind of feel like I did back in my youth ministry days when we get all the teens onto the vans on a mission trip, and then there was that one kid still in his or her bedroom, and sometimes I would just say, well, we're out. We'll see you at lunch. We'll come pick you up. Because when the bus is ready to go, the bus needs to go. Well, if I had voiced this opinion back 2,000 years ago, I would have been wrong, because there was good reason to get Matthias on board, multiple reasons. But one I want to point out is, and this is always a question you want to ask when you're reading the Bible, what does this tell us about God? And I think that it does tell us something about God, pretty important here. And I would put it this way: the God who seeks the lost also seeks the leaders. I mean, think about this. God himself was willing to pause the entire mission of bringing the gospel to the world so that one guy could get on the bus. Like, this is very significant. Like, one of the things that it says to me and speaks to me is that there is a kingdom role for every single kingdom person. And God wants you to find your role on the team. In fact, Matthias, he's just the first example of someone getting on board with this great mission to go change the world. In fact, I want to read a few more verses from Acts about other people who joined the cause here. And as I read these, I want you to pay attention not just to who they are, but I want you to pay attention to what they did. Acts 4, Barnabas sold a field, brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet. Acts 8, Philip ran up to the chariot. Acts 9, Ananias went to the house and entered it. When, if you know this story, Ananias did not want to do that. He was very scared to do it because Saul was there. Tabitha was always doing good and helping the poor. John was with them as their helper. Lydia invited us into her home. Priscilla and Aquila explained to him the way of God more adequately. So I want you to think about these people of faith and what made them people of faith that made a big difference in the world. It wasn't just because of a title they had, it was because of their assignment. They all had a role, they all had a job, they chipped in and actually did something. In fact, this is just a few of the people, but I want to show you other names. Sometimes I really like thinking about the people who are mentioned like just once or twice in the book of Acts. They don't make the headlines. We don't know a lot about them, but there's a whole lot of other people like Aristarchus and people like Trophimus and people like Sopater and Sosthenes. And again, we don't know a lot about these people, but they're all on the bus. And of the few things we do know is that they chipped in little ways. Like some of these people, they were traveling companions, and they would just hop on the caravan with Paul, and they would take care of his clothes and his food and his finances and things like that. A lot of these people had roles behind the scenes, which we might not think are a huge deal, but it got them on the team. They all had an assignment. Now, if you think about it, these were the very people who suffered. They were persecuted. They were put in jail. They suffered immense loss to their reputation. They lost their loved ones. And yet they came out of all of it with this crazy, robust, authentic faith. And so again, we have to ask ourselves, what is it? Like, what are the ingredients to this kind of a faith? Well, here's the main idea I'd want to present to you this morning. Personal ownership in a specific task is what produces a robust faith. It's not the only thing. We're going to talk about other factors in subsequent weeks, but this is so important. Personal ownership, like this has to come, like it has to be your thing. Not just because your Bible class is doing something, or your Q group's doing something, or your mom told you to do something, or your sister's doing something. Like this has to be your thing. Personal ownership. It's got to be specific. Like you need to have your niche, your job in the kingdom of God. And when you find like this is what I do, those are the kind of people that have this really, really strong faith. It's like if you know somebody who would say, yeah, my faith is just not very strong right now. Or if you yourself are in that place, yeah, I'm doing the church thing, but I'm not sure what I believe. It's just not very strong. Then I would ask you, what are you doing? Like what task are you engaged in to further the kingdom? Because one of the things that I think is a big plague to Christianity today is that we have compartmentalized faith only in the realm of intellect. So we've equated what we believe basically with what we think. And so then we think, well, it's the people with a strong faith are the ones that have it all figured out, and they have all their beliefs figured out, and they have all this intellectual stuff going on in their head. Well, sure, that's part of faith. But if faith is only your intellect, then you're going to have a weak faith. The people with the strongest faith are the people that put their faith into action by what they do. In other words, if you want to find a faith that lasts, you need to find a task. You need to find something to do. In fact, if you've been a Christian for a long time, you'll know this verse, very famous verse from the book of James. Do you remember what James says is the killer of faith? James says that the killer of faith is the absence of deeds. He says faith without deeds is dead. So if you're not actually living out your faith through bringing food to people that need it, or practicing hospitality, or teaching a Bible class, or if any of these tasks, if you don't have those in your life, your faith is going to be really weak. Now here's an interesting thought I've had about this particular sentence that you see on the screen. If some of us were to have, like if we could take a time machine 2,000 years ago and we could consult with James about this letter, there are some people in the world today that would advise James to rewrite the sentence like this: faith without opinion is dead. Consider for a moment the way that we treat each other. And consider for a moment why we judge each other. It's because we perceive that somebody else's opinion isn't right, like our opinion, and that makes that person's faith weak. And this goes from right to left, and this goes from left to right. This is the way we live. Faith without opinion is dead. But that's not what James said. James said faith without deeds is dead. So again, what are you doing? What task have you taken up for the kingdom of God? I found this so interesting a few weeks ago in Q group. 10 of us were sitting around a circle, and I asked this question. I said, tell me someone who has deep faith that you know, and tell me why they have, why do they have deep faith? And every person in the room shared a story. One person said, well, it's my mom. Why does she have deep faith? Well, she prays. She prays a lot. One person says, well, it's my boss. Okay, why does your boss have deep faith? Well, he makes all of his work-related decisions through the mindset of Scripture, and he just carries himself with immense joy and treats everybody with dignity. Okay. Someone else said, I have this friend in Texas, and she's just got deep faith. Okay, why does she have deep faith? Well, she has so much compassion, like relentless compassion for the people around her. Someone else says, well, I have a friend who's suffered a lot, and he has deep faith. Okay, well, why does he have deep faith? It's because even in the midst of his suffering, he continues to serve in the church. And one by one, we just told stories about all these people of faith, and we got to the end of the circle, and it just dawned on me that no one had said a word about this person has deep faith because of their opinions, or this person has deep faith because of their politics. All 10 told stories of people with deep faith because of what they did. It was their deeds, it was their role, it was their job. That's what inspired these people. So again, I say, if you want a faith that lasts, you got to find a task. Now, let me address something fairly specific and practical here, because this has come up in ministry actually quite a bit over the years. Someone will say, Phil, I'm ready, I want to serve, my desire level is up here, I don't know what to do. And nobody's really asking me. Like, I want to serve, but my phone's not ringing. Like, what do I do? Well, it's a really interesting question. I want you to think pretty deeply about a interesting part of Acts chapter 1 that I think this is an interesting train of thought. Why was James, the brother of Jesus, not selected to be the 12th apostle? So stick with me here. This kind of odd train of thought here. James, the brother of Jesus, was there in Acts chapter 1. In fact, we read this, verse 14, they all joined together constantly in prayer along with his brothers. So we know James was there for the ascension. He was there for the final words, go be my witnesses. We also know from 1 Corinthians 15 that Jesus made a special appearance to James post-resurrection. So Jesus rises from the dead. He appears to all these people. At least once, he makes a special appearance to his own brother James. And so what we know about James then is that James was there from the beginning. He grew up with Jesus. He was around when all this ministry happened, and that Jesus made an appearance to James post-resurrection. So again, I ask, why wasn't James even considered? James wasn't even part of the final 2 people that got put forth to take this place among the apostles. Now think about this. If anybody had a reason to fade into the shadows because no one recognized him, it was James. Nobody nominated James. No one called James's name out and says, James, you've been with us. Why don't you serve? No one did that. And if James had faded off into the distance, no one would have even batted an eye. We wouldn't really care. It wouldn't be on our brains if James wasn't part of the biblical story. And yet, when you learned your books of the Bible, it did not go like this. Titus and Philemon, Hebrews, Matthias. It went Hebrews, James. Why? Because the guy that didn't get picked didn't give up. It's really ironic here that Matthias does nothing, at least recorded-wise, for the rest of the Bible, and then James, the guy that doesn't get picked, he writes a letter of the New Testament. Galatians 2 says that James is a pillar of the church along with Cephas and others. In Acts 15, the most significant church meeting in church history, you've got the Apostle Paul there, you've got the Apostle Peter there talking about the most important issue of the day, but if you read Acts 15, the leader that stands up and speaks the most is James. And so what this tells us is that James, his path towards a role in the kingdom was not given to him, it was forged by him. He didn't feel sorry for himself. He didn't say, why didn't I get picked? He just stepped up and said, I'm going to do something. It's no wonder that James is the guy that wrote Faith Without Deeds is Dead, because James's entire ministry was created by himself doing proactive deeds. Like if he had just sat back and done nothing, he wouldn't have been able to write what he wrote. So here's what I've observed about myself and most Christians I know. We all want the Matthias calling. Matthias, he's just hanging out, and all the apostles are like, hey, you are so faithful and so good, and you've been with us. Why don't you take this seat? You're great. We love you. Here's some work to do. We all want that. But what I've observed is that no one ever gets that. Like, don't you want, don't you just want, multiple people to ask you for your wisdom and advice? And don't you want, for you to get just multiple texts and emails about, hey, can you help with this? Can you serve with this? And I know you're good at this, and will you plug in here? Doesn't that sound great? We all want to be wanted. But the reality is, for most of us, that's not going to happen. And so what I'm saying is, just because you're not asked doesn't mean you're not called. Most of us have the story of James, where maybe we didn't get asked, but we still have gifts, we still have passion, we still have desire, and maybe for quite a while you have blamed this on somebody else why you haven't jumped in and done something, but perhaps it's time to say, you know what, this is on me. I've got to step up, recognize what my passions are, and then I've just got to jump in, even if it's not perfect. I love stories from our members when people do this really, really well. So I'll tell you one story here. So this is there should be a picture in a minute of two guys from our church. One is Dennis Kelly, and Dennis has been a member here a really, really long time. Well, in the middle of the pandemic, Dennis decided that he wanted to do something to bless others, and so he took it upon himself to start visiting elderly people and shut-ins. Nobody asked him to do this. He just did it. I'm going to go out and do this. At church camp, I was there, and this young man named Robert Burke came up to me one day, and he said, Phil, I got to ask you a question. I don't think we'd ever spoken to this point. I was like, great. I said, what's your question? And Robert said, I feel convicted to bless the elderly. One of our shepherds had actually come to church camp and done a session on what it means to give care to the elderly. Chris McKeever was that elder, and Robert was really inspired by that. And so Robert was asking me, what do I do? How do I serve? Well, the next week, I contacted Dennis and then contacted Robert and said, Robert, you need to just go hang out with Dennis. Dennis is already doing it. And so what Robert and Dennis have been doing together now is serving the elderly as a team. And I love that for so many reasons, but maybe the reason I love it the most is no one asked them to do this. They both were listening to God, and they both felt convicted, and they just got up and started doing it. I love when those kinds of things happen. So I ask you, what do you feel like God might be calling you to do when it comes to ministry and service? So one sport I really enjoyed watching in the Olympics was rowing. And the one that to me is the most intriguing is the 8-man boat. When you have the 8-man boat, you've got 8 people that row, and you have this other person, and they sit in the front of the boat. They're called the coxswain. And their job, they don't have an oar. They're looking ahead, because they're the only one that can see forwards. Everybody else is actually rowing and they're traveling backwards. But the coxswain looks ahead, and they keep track of the stroke count, and they keep track of the rhythm, and they're paying attention to where the other boats are, the opponents, and they're like the coach of the team, and they're calling out things, and it's the coxswain's job to make sure that all the 8 rowers are rowing together. And if everybody does their job, it's pretty incredible to watch. Now, think about this for a minute. What would happen to the boat if it were rearranged to look like this? If there were 8 coxswains and 1 rower, that boat wouldn't go very far. And so here's my point. What happens to a church when everybody feels called to be a coxswain and no one picks up an oar? Church doesn't go very far. Now, there are people who are called to be, I would call spiritual coxswains, spiritual coaches, to look out, observe the larger cultural trends, to analyze what's going on, to help the rest of us avoid the pitfalls to share what's really going on big picture wise. Those people are really, really important. And at times, I do think we're all called to that kind of a task. But again, I ask, when all of us do that, no one's rowing. And when no one rows, the church doesn't go anywhere. And so here's my one challenge at the end of the sermon is simply this. For a season of ministry, I would challenge you to put down binoculars. Let's just pretend that the people who look out for a moment have binoculars and they're trying to observe all the threats, and here's what the culture's doing, and here's where the church might be in 50 years, and here's this and here's that, and we need to do this, and watch out for this. We need those bell ringers. They're important. But for just a season, just experiment with this. Put the binoculars down and pick up an oar. We need men and we need women who invest in the life of the church for the sake of the kingdom and the world. Because again, remember, personal ownership to a specific task produces a robust faith. And so we want to give every single person in the church an opportunity to hop in if you haven't hopped in a while, or to re-engage if it's been a while since you've actually been involved. And so I want you to watch this video, or not, before the video, let me tell you what we're doing after service. We're having a volunteer expo, and that's why we're ending early today. It's in Fellowship Central. There's nearly 30 ministries represented around the room, all sorts of ministries. You could volunteer to help out with Lilyfield. You could volunteer to serve at Second Chances. You can volunteer for our youth ministry. You can volunteer in our children's ministry. There's so many ministries that you could volunteer for. It's in Fellowship Central. And so after the service ends, before Bible class, we should have 15 minutes or so. We'd love you to go to Fellowship Central, make a round, and just pray through, okay, Lord, where are you wanting me to plug in here? Now, I also want you to know that the volunteer roles can also be found online. So you can go to mrcc.org/expo, or you can also find them on the MRCC app. But we really, really want everybody to look at all the opportunities that we have for you to serve. The expo is open now after service. It's also open after Bible class, if that works more for you. And it's also open after second service. I want you to watch this video now of several of our ministry leaders talking about the kinds of things that they need right now.
Adult Education is looking for some people to do really basic audio editing for our online classes.
AV Ministry is looking for operators both for Sunday morning second service and for Sunday evenings.
Campus Ministry is looking for people to adopt our college students and give them a home away from home.
At the Capitol Hill Ministry, we need men to help lead the worship on Sunday mornings and individuals to help teach English-speaking children and adults.
The Care and Counseling Ministry would like to invite you to serve in connecting with people. We'd love to see you serve alongside one of our single-parent families or to bless an adult caregiver with respite care.
Children's Ministry is looking for preschool teachers and buddies,
as well as Journeyland teachers and helpers.
Outreach Ministry is looking for volunteers to host First Cup and volunteers to help deliver mugs to guests.
Communications Ministry is looking for photographers and some people to help with our bulletin boards.
Hey, Celebrate Recovery, we are looking for safe people to help with our dinner team on Friday nights and also with our teenagers.
Disaster Relief Ministry needs volunteers to help us prepare for the next disaster by organizing and maintaining our tools.
International Ministry is looking for people to join with others to host a meal for internationals in your home.
Involvement Ministry is looking for welcoming people who can help newcomers to MRCC get plugged in and feel at home.
Hi, I'm Beverly with the Lighthouse, and we need some pharmacists to come join us and be the light. We also need a radiologist, and we even need a kid sonographer. If you could help by being a pulmonologist, we're set to go on sleep studies, but we need you. Come join us.
Lilyfield really needs you. We have opportunities to serve children and families right here in Oklahoma City through mentoring, after-school programming, and our Friday grocery giveaway. Please join us.
LTC is looking for coaches in chorus, drama, and puppets.
The Men's Ministry are looking for helpers to go on the men's mission trip in September, and also for men to help with service projects around the community.
Missions Ministry is looking for prayer warriors and for people to help when our missionaries are in town.
At the Our Town Ministry, we are looking for people who are willing to put some effort in at Orbis Rising with kids, with teachers, or even with some gardening opportunities that we have as well.
Prison Ministry is looking for van drivers.
Q Groups Ministry is looking for new leaders to make space for our people.
Hey guys, Second Chances really needs you. We need help with cleaning, organizing, and lots of help with making lunches.
Women's Ministry is looking for communications reps, people who can keep the Bible class informed about women's events.
Worship Ministry is looking for greeters, both at the main entrances and in the auditorium.
Hey, Young Adults is looking for vocational mentors.
The Youth and Family Ministry are looking for certified CDL bus drivers and van drivers.
Did anybody else totally think Curtis was going to say, we're looking for certified video game players? Like, did that crossed my mind, which I know a lot of if you're like a young boy in the room, you're like, oh, that's totally what I want to do to serve God. So here's the thing. Remember, right after service, we'd love you to swing by Fellowship Central, look at all the opportunities. Remember, you're going to have a long, good 20-minute period before Bible class starts. We hope you'll take advantage of that. And remember, if you're looking for just like the perfect fit that fits your personality and your elite needs and your energy and your time, you probably won't find that. Like, there's something to be said for just serving where the church needs you to serve. And so I really encourage you to go check it out and pray through that, because we need people to step up in this season of the life of our church. So we're going to sing a song that really captures the intent of the heart here. And the lyric goes, I am mine no more. I have been bought with blood. And so as we sing that song, if there's something that is going on in your life and you need the prayers of this particular church family, if you need our support, we'd love to pray for you. If you'd like to give your life to Christ in baptism, we'd love to make that opportunity available to you. Let's stand and sing.